originate in the Koinonia with the body. It is thus necessary to use the painful discipline in order to facilitate the proper hierarchical function of the soul and soften the effects of her coexistence with the body. In this paper, we will shed as much light as possible to the notion of Koinonia with the body, predominantly in regard to gymnastiki, in the interest of comprehending exactly the structure and the functioning of this relation. The first part has as a subtitle, Instrument or Prison of the Soul. Plato used intentionally the word Koinonia in order to demonstrate in a clear way that there is a distinction between two different parts, those parts being the body and the soul. In the dialogue Alcibiades, the Athenian philosopher raises the question about the nature of man, claiming that man must be one of three things, soul, body, or both together as one whole, only to conclude after a while that neither the body nor the combination of the two is man. Either man is nothing at all, or if something, he turns out to be nothing else than soul. Briefly, one could suppose that the relation between the body and the soul is quite direct, conceiving it as a relation of two parts that are not equal, at least in matters of importance, and without implying that the body is unimportant to Plato. Having thus a communion between the soul, who acts as a ruler, and the body that is practically an instrument of the soul. But it's not that straightforward. In the Phaedo, Plato chooses brilliantly to present Socrates as the prisoner of the state of Athens, and it is not a coincidence that in the same dialogue, the philosopher reanalyzes an idea of Orphic origin, that the body is actually the prison of the soul. The soul cannot be considered truly free while in body, as Socrates is not free while in prison. The soul is obliged to live within a body, as Socrates is obliged to stay in prison. In the same spirit, Plato revisits the specific concept of in the Cratylus, yes, where he says, some say it is the tomb of the soul, their notion being that the soul is buried in the present life. And again, because by its means the soul gives any signs which it gives, it is for this reason also properly called sign, sima in Greek. But I think it most likely that the Orphic poets gave this name with the idea that the soul is undergoing punishment for something. They think it has the body as an enclosure to keep it safe, like a prison. And this, as the name itself denotes, the safe, soma, for the soul, until the penalty is paid and not even a letter needs to be changed. To recapitulate, the body is both an instrument and the prison of the soul, while the soul is the ruler of the body and simultaneously her prisoner. One could say that this image is quite ambiguous. We have to examine this phenomenically contradictory depiction in order to understand why the Koinonia with the body is indeed an arduous task for the soul. The second part, we're going to try to define what is a body, defining the body. Well, strictly speaking, using the definition provided by Brisson Prado in the work Dictionnaire Platon, and mostly based on the dialogue Timaeus, the body could be described as a material composition that presents a specific geometrical structure and consists of the four classical elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Thus, the body belongs to the category of the composite things that are changing and are never the same. The purpose of the body is to be the instrument of the soul, created by nature to obey her, since the body and the soul and the body are joined together, and nature directs the one to serve and be ruled, and the other to rule and be master. That is from Timaeus. It is quite a paradox that, despite the fact that the philosopher is not a real friend of the body, its care determines in a peculiar way the destiny of the soul. I believe that is why Plato chooses to analyze the role of the body in the Phaedo, a dialogue otherwise dedicated to the soul. The Athenian philosopher manages to shed light onto their relation till the legitimate separation, that is death, of course, indicating the proper use of the body and establishing a clear hierarchy between these two. Since there is a hierarchy between the soul and the body, where the former is obviously the ruler and the latter assumes the role of the instrument of your will, how can the body be considered a prison of the soul, who is after all supposed to be its master? Plato underlines that as long as we have the body and the soul is contaminated by such an evil, we shall never attain completely what we desire, that is, the truth. For the body keeps us constantly busy by reason of its need of sustenance. The soul can never be completely free to reason and to philosophize in order to seek truth, due to the contact with the body that comes along with pain and pleasure and all those bodily needs. And that's why the body can be characterized as a prison for the soul. Third part, the philosopher and the prison. One of the main reasons that the koinonia with the body is in fact an arduous task for the soul is the matter of health. To be more specific, it is the absence of health that poses all the challenges to the soul. If diseases come upon it, the body, they hinder out our pursuit of the truth, says Plato in Dialogue Phaedo. With these words, Plato presents distinctly his interest for the physical health, whose imbalance would not permit to the philosopher to continue his research towards the truth. Although Plato remains extremely vigilant when it comes to the use of the word agathon, in the dialogue Euthydemus, he seems willing to accept the use of the word regarding health, clarifying that as regards the whole lot of things which at first we termed goods, the discussion they demand is not on the question of how they are in themselves and by nature goods, but rather, I conceive, as follows. If they are guided by ignorance, they are greater evils than their opposites, according as they are more capable of ministering to their evil guide. Whereas if understanding and wisdom guide them, they are greater goods. In the Republic, Plato claims that we love health for its own sake and for its consequences. In the Gorgias, in Dialogue Gorgias, yes, the philosopher describes it as a type of corporeal excellence, a definition that demonstrates the importance of health and the necessity of a harmonious function of the instrument of the soul. This corporeal excellence is an interesting notion. Plato affirms that there's a specific virtue or excellence of everything for which a specific work or function is appointed. He then proceeds to explore the proper function of the eyes and the ears, claiming that if they can accomplish the work properly, that flawless work can be also described as a virtue. Otherwise, if anything does not function properly, that happens due to its kakia, that is the opposite of excellence and virtue arti. If we apply the same logic while examining the concept of the corporeal excellence in the Platonic dialogues, we could conclude that health is actually an excellence, the virtue of the body, that is the defectless function of the body that can accomplish properly all its tasks. It is in the interest of the philosopher to find a way to procure this kind of excellence, and furthermore, it seems reasonable to try as long as possible to maintain the virtue of the body. That is why Plato claims there is a third class of agatha that can contribute to the acquisition of health. In the Republic, the philosopher states that we can find a third form of good under which falls exercise and being healed when sick, and the art of healing. For of them, we would say that they are laborious and painful, yet beneficial, and for their own sake, we don't accept them, but only for the rewards and other benefits that accrue from them. That is from the Republic. Consequently, it is reasonable to assume that the soul, prisoner or not of the body, needs it as an instrument. A healthy body may assist the soul to rule the body in a more effortless manner while in search of the truth. Medicine and gymnastiki, belonging to the third class of agata, could provide the corporeal excellence that ameliorates the communion between the body and the soul. In the fourth part, we're going to examine a little bit the connection between Hippocrates and Plato concerning the medical part, and you probably see why we've done this. Hippocrates and Plato and medical gymnastiki. In an effort to define health, we have concluded that it must be some sort of corporeal excellence, accepting it as a virtue of the body. If you want to explore further the specific concept, and with some help from the Platonic Symposium, we will find that health is a kind of harmony for the body, a state of equilibrium regarding the four elements that compose it: earth, water, air, and fire. Any excess or deficiency of an element can damage this equilibrium, provoking a disorder, in other words, causing the sickness. This concept of the body as a composition of the elements, where the cause of the disorder, the pathologies, come as a result of the imbalance of those elements, could associate with the treatise on the nature of man from the Hippocratic corpus. In the Phaedrus, there is an interesting passage concerning Hippocrates. Socrates speaking. Now, do you think one can acquire any appreciable knowledge of the nature of the soul without knowing the nature of the whole man? Phaedrus replies, if Hippocrates, the Asclepiad, is to be trusted, one cannot know the nature of the body either, except in that way. He is right, my friend. However, we ought not to be content with the authority of Hippocrates, but to see also if our reason agrees with him on examination. Hippocrates is the father of medicine, but his medical approach offered an incredible scientific background to the art of gymnastiki. More particularly, Hippocrates created a new type of gymnastiki based on the experimentation, the observation, and the meticulous study of the relative facts. It is not an exaggeration if we state that gymnastiki becomes a science thanks to Hippocrates. According to his theory, there are mainly two factors that protect or restore health: diet and gymnastiki. It is also important to underline that Hippocrates criticizes the excessive aspect of the athletic gymnastiki, whose orientation is towards winning without respecting the equilibrium of elements that ensures health. In a similar way, Plato, probably influenced by the Hippocratic view on the matter of health, adopts the same approach, suggesting a proper alimentation and a clear rejection of the athletic gymnastiki due to its excessive character and the extreme interest towards the needs of the body. Both Hippocrates and Plato insist on the axiomatically defective nature of the body and the necessity of the art of gymnastiki. Hippocrates adopts this approach for the sake of health itself. On the other hand, Plato does not seem to authentically be interested in the fate of the body. He relies on the qualities of gymnastiki for the purpose of facilitating the task with the soul, with her tasks, for as long as it remains in Koinonia with the body. Gymnastiki and the thymic part of the soul. Gymnastiki is mostly connected to the body and its functions due to the nature of the technique, art. Plato usually tends to associate with the body, as we may observe in dialogues, where he refers quite often, one may say, to gymnastiki. In the Republic, Plato divides the education in two parts. As the philosopher says, what then is our education? Or is it hard to find a better than that which long time has discovered? Which is, I suppose, gymnastiki for the body and music for the soul. It is a fact that Plato creates a melange regarding the specific art. The philosopher seems to combine the medical gymnastiki with another type of exercise that is more suitable to the defensive needs of the polis. With these facts in mind, one could falsely conclude that gymnastiki is solely associated to the physical aspects of the human life. Nevertheless, Plato adds another dimension in relation to its necessity. Then may we not say, glaucon in English, I think, said I, that those who established an education in music and gymnastiki had not the purpose in view that some attribute to them in so instituting, namely to treat the body by one and the soul by the other. But what? He said. It seems likely, I said, that they ordain both chiefly for the soul's sake. Plato commences to develop his more profound thoughts about the art of gymnastiki, showing that his primordial purpose and its veritable use have nothing to do with the body. According to Plato, it is mostly destined to help the soul. We have already mentioned in the introductive part of the paper that gymnastiki fortifies the thymoides, the thymic part of the soul, contributing to its virtue, whose virtue is andria, courage. There is an important passage in the Republic. And even the exercises and toils of gymnastiki he will undertake with a view to the thymic part of his nature to arouse, that rather than for mere strength, unlike ordinary athletes who treat diet and exercise only as a means to muscle. It's not the first time in the ancient Greek literature that we notice a relation between the concept of gymnastiki and the soul. In line with the Hippocratic doctrine, the equilibrium of the body depends on the equilibrium of the four elements that compose the human body. The balance between the water and the fire seems to be more vital for the health. There are two types of exercise, the exercises for strength and the natural exercises in Hippocrates. The natural exercises consume the humidity that exists all over the body as an excess of the element of water, influencing in a positive manner the element of fire that affects the soul. Despite the fact that we do not know exactly how Hippocrates conceives the notion of the soul, probably materialistic, I don't know. The idea that the bodily functions such as exercising can affect the soul is quite interesting. Plato is clearer in the matter at hand. It is the thymic part of the soul, the one that is directly influenced by the gymnastiki, and the result is also evident. There is a natural alliance between the thymic part of the soul and the rational part of the soul, logistikon, so that they can face together the complications that originate in the Koinonia with the body in the appetitive part of the soul. A well-educated and uncorrupted against the vices and the false desires caused by the can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, you've lost something. Should I repeat something from my
you
paper?
Can repeat the last sentence will be enough. It was just a little pause.
Okay. So a well-educated and uncorrupted thymoides with its andria acts as an ally to the rational part of the soul against the vices and the false desires caused by the irrationality. So, an arduous task for the soul. Koinonia with the body is indeed an arduous task for the soul as an imprisoned ruler of the body, which is simultaneously her instrument and her prison, is always in need of ways that will help her to establish the reign. As the wise soul will choose you not to yield to the passions of the body, she will lead all the elements which she is said to consist of, choosing to oppose them and furthermore chastise them, and with a painful discipline, such as gymnastiki, permitting thus to the thinking part of the soul to act as a natural ally to the rational part against the vices and irrationalities that come forth due to the koinonia of the soul with the body. Even though, according to Plato, the true philosopher cannot be a friend of the body, if the philosopher wants to achieve a balanced hierarchy between the body and the soul that will allow him to continue his pursuit of the truth, he should protect his physical health while nourishing the thymic part of the soul with the use of a technique of the body, that is gymnastiki. Perhaps the body with its own physical limitations can be ultimately a prison. However, by using all the means that we have, we will be able to catch a glimpse of an uncorrupted koinonia with the body, rendering the task less arduous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now 10 minutes, more or less, 10 until 15 minutes for the discussion. If there are any questions, I would ask you please to use the hand function, hand option in Zoom. Yes, Mr. Travis Butler.
I was wondering if you could say a little bit about the relationship between the Phaedo and the Republic. Because in the Phaedo, he doesn't really talk very much about this idea of harmony or equilibrium, but it's just that you're supposed to avoid bodily desires and pleasures as far as possible and withdraw from the senses as far as possible. And of course, the Phaedo doesn't really mention the thumos. And so do you think that that's a substantive difference between the Phaedo and the Republic, or just a difference in expression?
Thank you for the question. First of all, I'd like to mention that this basic difference between the Republic and the Phaedo do have to do with the concept that Plato treats. So in the Phaedo, we have this orientation towards the soul, as I said in my paper, and in the Republic we have he examines the justice. So since his definition of justice needs the three parts of the soul, needs the thymic part, needs the appetitive part, and the rational part, he proceeds to explain and to explore this concept. Now, I don't think so that in the Phaedo he has a different option about the tripartite soul. I don't have such a clue that indicates such a thing. So what I believe is that the difference is just depends on the matter that is that Plato examines. I don't know if I.
Yeah, do you think the theory of virtue is the same? That he has the same conception of what virtue is in the two dialogues?
I think that from a specific point and further, Plato does have a concrete and solid conception of the of virtue that he continuously does not adapt. He develops it as a conception. That's what I think.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the talk.
Thank you for the question. There's now a question from Veronika Konradova.
Thank you. Thank you for your talk. I will refer to the part where you have stressed the educational role of gymnastics,
Yes.
and you stressed the fact that gymnastics is important for education of the soul, which is perfectly correct. And you, of course, mentioned the role of the musique, which is important for education of the soul as well. And I would like to ask if you can see also some physical aspect of the education through musique. If we consider, for example, dance, which is a physical performance. Would you consider also this physical aspect of education, and maybe stress a bit this physical aspect of education?
Okay, that is a very interesting question. Thank you for that. In the laws, Plato, in his dialogue, The Laws, Plato explores the concept of dance, that he actually characterizes as a melange between an instrument for education for the soul and the body. And it is the first time that through the body, he can teach something to the soul, because if we can remember well, he says that by imitating a specific type of dance, we create the ambience for a character, and after imitating this character, this trait that we produce through dancing, it passes to the soul. And he uses it for dancing that have their orientation towards not war and stuff, you know. So there is the physical education is very important to Plato, plays a specific role and a very important one. With my paper, I had to show that the education, and to be more precise, the part of the gymnastique associates to the soul. It associates to the body, since it is a technique, an art of the body. It associates to the body, but Plato wants to use it more for the soul, because he believes that he affects the soul, and to be more specific, the thymic part of the soul, the thymoides. But the physical part, physical education is there, and he, if memory serves me well, he develops it quite expansively in the Republic, in the Laws, etc.
Thank you.
We have now a question from Stefanos Stefanides.
Hello, thank you very much for the paper. You just mentioned the laws. I wondered whether you'd taken into consideration another late dialogue, the Timaeus, on this question of, you know,
I'm sorry, you said Charmides?
No, the Timaeus,
Okay.
another one of Plato's late dialogues. Just pushing on Travis's previous question on kind of whether Plato's conception of virtue changes over time, whether you've considered that there is a subtle shift in emphasis. You know, you rightly say that in the Republic, gymnastique, physical education is kind of solely for the thymoidic part of the soul. But in the Timaeus, I'm thinking around 87 and following, that's the Stephanus pages. He explicitly says that gymnastique is for the sake of the body itself. And there seems to be much more emphasis on the harmony of the whole synemphoteron, on achieving symmetry and balance between the body and soul. And this language of the body kind of being a prison for the soul seems to be dropped. The shift focuses more on the goodness of the whole. I think probably one of the reasons for that shift is, you know, Plato's interest in cosmology and kind of creating that bridge between the sensible and the intelligible worlds. And the evidence you've cited for the laws, I think, is consistent with that slight shift in emphasis.
I agree with that possibility. I do not say that this is not an option. I think that there is a shift from a different point of view and an emphasis to a different angle. So I agree with this possibility. It is this one, not. If you want, if you have another question.
If there's no follow-up question, there's a question from Silvio Marino as well.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you. First of all, thank you for your presentation. If I understood correctly, you use as samples of Hippocratic perspective the De Victu, isn't it?
On regimen and on the nature of just not to on the nature of sorry.
Because
go ahead.
Yes, because there is I think that there is a question, for example, in the Republic, the book 3, when Plato, when Socrates, of course, criticizes the use of a new medicine. That means what you said, the mix of gymnastics and medicine. Yes, the example is Herodicus, no, of Selimbria. The only thing he got is to have a long-lasting death. So, why did you use this? Because in the Republic, there is, I think, there is a critique about against the new medicine, the medicine of the 4th century before Christ. I think the regimen or the Victu belongs to this period now, but I think it could refer to ancient medicine, because if I'm right, Socrates says that this medicine that we have nowadays is very far from the first medicine of the Asclepiads. So, and I think, what do you think? Because I think there in that passage of the Republic, Plato could refer to on ancient medicine, this treatise against the treatise on the regimen or De Victu, because they have completely different perspectives. So thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think that it's not a critique towards Hippocrates and the Hippocratic corpus and this way of medical thinking. I think it's more of a critique towards those that so demonstrate an excessive thought, an excessive indicate an excessive way to treat their bodies. Because if we remember well, the passage says that he passed all his life treating his problem, his condition. So he was sick and he was not sick. Showing too much care about this problem. So actually, I believe that he criticizes the excessive care towards the body. I do remember the other part from the Republic, where he says that I think from the Republic that the Asclepiads were another type of doctors. But I think it has to do more with the simpler way of life back in their antiquity that they had. He says there's a passage that he says that how it goes. Their sicknesses were simpler. while now every sickness due to the corruption and due to the decadence of the society has developed and it has become more painful, more complicated, etc., etc. So I don't think that he criticizes, Plato doesn't criticize Hippocrates. He knows Hippocrates and he respects his way of thinking and his medical approach. That's at least what I get from the dialogues.
Okay, we are
Thank you.
Perfectly on time, but yes, Edward Halper has a question. If we can make it short, both the question and the answer would be quite on time.
Okay, very short. Yes, thank you for the paper. I wonder if you could push it further and say that not only does gymnastica help educate thumos, but also it helps with reason. After all, in the Timaeus, I'm sorry, not in the Timaeus, in the Philebus, order, symmetry are beautiful and therefore intelligible. And when the body becomes orderly and symmetrical, it is intelligible, and the person can understand and appreciate the order of his own body achieved through gymnastica. And when this comes up in the Republic, he hasn't really made the distinction yet between between thumos and reason. So we get we don't really have the apparatus to make the distinction in the Republic, but later on it seems maybe we do. Just a suggestion.
I couldn't hear you quite well. So from what I've understood, I think that I agree with that, what you say, because gymnastiki and the cultivation of the body is used by Plato as a way to help to the ascension of the soul, since it helps building up and constructing the symmetry of the bodies, etc., etc. So because I could not hear you properly, if I managed to answer your question.
That's fine. I don't want to take any more time. We're already running late. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Konstantinos Gkaleas, for the interesting paper and presentation. Thank you also everyone who participated with the questions. Now it's time to move on to our next guest. It's time for Luca Pitteloud of the Universidad Federal do ABC with his paper, The Community Between the Intelligible and the Sensible, the Demiurge as an Epistemic Thought Experiment. Once again, we have 25 to 30 minutes for the presentation and then 10 to 15 minutes for the questions. Luca, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you as well. Okay, so you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Thank you for the organization of this conference, to Raoul and all the people who helped to organize. I'm very happy to take part in it. So I'm going to read my text. I will have to skip a few sections, but I will just say it. Well, you don't have the text, but I'm saying that because it's part of a larger project, and I'm going just to highlight a few elements, and maybe in the discussion some other will come up. So I'll start my time here. So in the long history of interpretations of Plato's cosmological discourse, there has been no agreement on how to answer to the question, who is the Demiurge? Ancient and contemporary answer to this question can be divided according to three main tendencies. One, the literal interpretation, which assumes that the Demiurge must be understood as a divine cause responsible for the actual fabrication of the universe. Two, the didactic interpretation, which implies admitting a demiurgic function of an independent and separated intellect in Plato's cosmological scheme. And three, the I call reductionist interpretation, attempts to identify the Demiurge with another entity described by Timaeus in his discourse, somehow related to either the intelligible model or the world soul. Each of these lines of interpretation depend on an understanding of the timers as a whole, and also, for some of them, on the necessity of attributing or not a doctrinal unity to Plato's thought. My approach in this paper will be based on the following principle. In order to understand who the Demiurge is, it is necessary to appreciate the status of timers' discourse. In other words, if we understand what kind of discourses about the universe timers provide, then the role of the Demiurge will hopefully appear more clearly. More specifically, I wish to suggest that the timers' eikos mythos could be understood as a thought experiment, and that consequently the Demiurge must be conceived as an epistemologic point of view adopted by anyone who attempts to fashion the universe in the laboratory of the mind. It is because timers wishes to give a discourse involving, I think, three elements: the model, the receptacle, the material, and a craftsman, that the productive causality is abruptly introduced at 28a6. Why does timers wish to offer such a discourse? No explicit answer can be found in the text. But timers nevertheless insist on the fact that one, the Demiurge, choosing the best possible model, an intelligible one, and being himself the best of causes, will fashion a beautiful universe. Two, it is hard to find the maker and the father of the universe, and it is impossible to talk about him to everybody. And three, the discourse offered is an eikos mythos. In fact, timers distinguishes between consistent and exact discourses and the like limit in a very well-known and commented passages. Does the introduction of the eikos mythos imply that the limitation of the discourse is related to its object, the universe being an ever-changing image of its model? Or is there any other way, of course, there is, to understand the status of timers' discourses? It seems that the discourse is qualified as an eikos mythos, not only because it addresses the question of the nature of the becoming, but also because it deals with matter about the gods and the generation of the universe, 29c, 4-5. I would like to suggest that it is possible to understand timers' discourse, world discourses, as a kind of thought experiment allowing the audience and the reader to follow the footsteps of a divine craftsman. In other words, timers is presenting to us the great experiment of fashioning the whole of the universe, an experiment which needs to be achieved not only by deductive and non-deductive reasoning, but also with the use of our imagination, or maybe the production of images. In consequence, the Demiurge will appear to be an epistemological device allowing this experience to take place in our minds, which I think has two important claims in order to understand the difference of this interpretation in relation to other. One, it does not seem necessary to attribute to the Demiurge an ontological role, and two, timers' experiment cannot be translated into a purely argumentative account. So it is usually admitted that thought experiments are counterfactual scenarios involving the use of imagination in order to obtain new knowledge about reality. Now there is a section I'm going to skip, but I will just give you a sum up of it. There are usually two views which are opposed about what are thought experiments. One is called the argument view, which defend that every thought experiment can be translated into an argument, and the other one, the opposite, which is called the intuition-based account, and sometimes the Platonic account, which claim that thought experiments bring new a priori knowledge about nature. I'm not going to enter into the detail, but one in between, I think, view on thought experiment, which I think interesting and which I would like to suggest that could be applied to the timers, is called the mental model account, in which thought experiment consists in the manipulation of mental models in our minds. According to this view, our ability to build mental models, that is quasi-spatial mental representation furnished with previous pieces of knowledge, and then manipulate the furniture of these models, allow us to access new knowledge that could not have been reached without the manipulation of mental images. So, and just before going into the timers, in order to, of course, delimit what thought experiments are, and without giving a precise definition, because there are a lot of debate about that, I would just like to suggest 3 criteria that I will accept. One, a thought experiment must always involve a counterfactual scenario. There are a lot of discussion about which level of counterfactual, but I'm not going into that. 2, a thought experiment should not be transposable into a deductive or non-deductive argument. Of course, this is the criterion which is rejected by the argument view. 3, thought experiment must allow a cognitive process. We must learn something new after running the thought experiment. At this point, you might ask, what does all that have to do with Plato timers? A little bit, I want to argue. So, timers' speech give the reader the impression of being both a rigorous piece of argumentation, developing a precise chain of deduction, that is the Demiurge reasoning, and an impressive exercise of imagination. Imagination is used within the discourse in the place of empirical experiences. In all discourses, only 3 experiences are described. 2 of them are empirical experiment, 66E on the formation of odors, and 85CD on the role of fibers in blood. And a third one, which is actually what everyone would call the thought experiment, which is very close to Archetype's styles thought experiment, that is in 63A to B. Some scholars have claimed that the description of the pre-cosmic chaos, 52D4, 53B5, must be understood as a thought experiment. This passage constitutes a description of the state of the universe before the Demiurge initiates his work, when the images, mimemata, of the 4 elements already exist and appear in the receptacle. These images are called traces, ishne, of the elements that shake the receptacle and are in turn shaken by it. They are not yet configured by the Demiurge by means of shape and number, and they appear as affection with powers that are neither alike nor even balanced, without proportion and measure. These traces, which should be identified, I think, with the images of the form of the 4 elements, would not describe a pre-cosmic state of the universe, but a thought experiment in which we imagine how our universe would be without the Demiurge action. The state of the universe could be reached through a sort of abstraction of all demiurgic work in the universe. However, it must be noted that when Timers described this pre-cosmic state, he claimed that the traces of the element can be seen, 52E1. But seen by whom? Since at that moment in the history, in the universe history, no living being has yet been created to see those traces. The only candidate seems to be the Demiurge. What is also plausible is that we, as readers of Timers' speech, who can put ourselves into the Demiurge steps and look, so to speak, at the whole universe before and after it has been fabricated. That is, the Demiurge seems to be, for me, an epistemological perspective we must adopt in order to look at the universe from the outside, a point of view that is not empirically accessible or reducible to abstract thinking. In that case, it might be suggested that the thought experimental dimension of Timers' speech does not only concern the description of the pre-cosmic chaos. That would be, I think, too limited, and a partial interpretation, since what we are led to see in the Timers' myth is the experiment of fashioning the universe, and not only what the universe would be before this experiment. The description of the pre-cosmic chaos is, I think, a part of that thought experiment. I would like now to suggest that within the demiurgic process, the thought experiment point of view is adopted at 2 specific moments: the macroscopic and the microscopic investigation into the universe. This is when the Demiurge constituted all the things that are not reachable by direct human experience. And actually, when he must translate some of the properties of the model into the sensible. The macroscopic dimension deals with the characteristic of the universe that must be imagine from outside of it, and the microscopic dimension deals with the description of the invisible particle out of which the four elements are made. The timer thought experiment aims to answer this question, to be more precise. If an intelligent God were creating the best possible cosmos, how would he proceed? So now I'll skip a section about the deduction that happened into the Demiurge mind, as you probably all know, where he decided that he should constitute the universe as a living being, having a body and a soul, and decided how the body and how the soul will be. I will just stress on one argument, which is 31A to 31B3, very famous argument, which is that since the model of the universe, which is the form of the living being, is unique, and the universe as its image must resemble its model, the universe will be unique. So the argument, which has been discussed a lot, seems to be an example of a deduction. The first premise is the model of the universe is unique, which has been shown before, or at least proved before by the Demiurge. P2, if the second premise is, if a model is unique, then its image must be unique in order to resemble its model as much as possible. C, the universe, conclusion, must be unique. No explicit defense can be found in the argument of the second premises given by Timus. Timus claimed that in order to make the image like the model, in respect to its uniqueness, the universe has to be unique. The second premises can be supplied if we admit that for any image, in order to more closely resemble its model, it must possess the property of the model qua model. The classical relationship between intelligible and sensible contains a one-over-many assumption that implies that there is one unique form over many particulars participating in it. In this way, P2 seems to be false. The Demiurge has even been accused of being insane. However, the Demiurge reasoning appears to admit that in the specific case of the universe as a whole, if it has to be the best possible image of the intelligible, it must not only be a whole organized and unified by mathematical proportion, but it must also be unique. This affirmation seems to enter in conflict with another premise admitted by the Demiurge, which is the product of his work will be better if it is all-inclusive, 30D, 31A. For this very reason, the Demiurge constitute the four living species. In the context of this argument, the Demiurge concludes that a complete and diverse cosmos is better than the universe containing only one species. You can imagine a universe which would be just containing of one maybe planet or one celestial god in perfect motion. Would the universe not be more complete if it were constituted by more than one cosmos? This possibility, of course, is explicitly recognized at 55C for D6, after the description of the constitution of the five solids, which can be constructed from the two basic triangles that are the basic constituent of all bodily realities. As for the solid are associated with each one of the four elements, the function of the fifth, the dodecadria, remains open. Two possibilities are suggested. One, it might be attributed to the universe as a whole, but it seems to contradict the affirmation at 33b that the universe has a spherical shape. And two, a suitable 55C7 emelos possibility involves the plurality of universe. More specifically, asked Timus, why would we not admit five cosmoi, each of them possessing the shape of one of the solid? It is interesting to note that Timus acknowledges it is quite reasonable to feel some doubt about it, and that someone else, looking at other consideration, might have a different opinion. Timus will stick to the idea that the universe is unique, but as he said, his choice is made according to the likely meter, likely account, 55D5. The fact, just checking the time, the fact that Timus interrupts his myth and claims that when reconstructing the Demiurge choice, we must admit the possibility of alternative hypotheses is quite significant. We cannot rule out, what cannot be ruled out is that the Demiurge would build 5 sub-universes, 5 cosmos. After all, this choice would respect the requirement of completeness. Just as the universe is more complete and perfect through possessing all the living species, it would also be more perfect if the 5 solids were to be exemplified as the shape of 5 different cosmos. By walking in the Demiurge footsteps in trying to deduce the property of the universe from the intelligible model, we are led to undertake an exercise of testing different hypotheses and of reconstructing alternative configuration of the universe. This experimental process, as it appears, needs to be carried out within our mind. Furthermore, now I'll go to the second. I did one argument of the macroscopic, now I go to the microscopic. The Demiurge not only offered us an external point of view on the universe, but also an internal one. When describing the invisible constituent of all things, the Demiurge could be seen as a kind of microscope that help us to visualize the interior of the corporal bodies. Bodies are, in the universe, made of the 4 elements, but they are not the ultimate constituent of body. Timus develops the following argument. 1, the 4 elements are bodies. 2, bodies are depth. 3, depth must be bounded by surface. 4, every surface which is rectilinear is composed of triangle. 2 of triangles said to be the most beautiful, namely the right angle isosceles and the right angle scalene, are chosen to be the basic constituent of bodies. From these 2 triangles, the Demiurge will constitute 2 more complex plane surfaces, and then they will combine them in order to obtain the 4 regular solids. I'll pass the next paragraph, but it's important just to say that we have here a description which is primarily used to explain the transmutation of the element, and this exercise of visualizing the transformation of the element has been sometimes called a kind of child puzzle or even a kind of Legoland. And I think that's, and to cause some pleasure to us when trying to do the combination. Just as in the eventuality of multiple cosmoi, Timus admits that his choice of the 2 most beautiful triangles is not certain. He leaves open the possibility that a friend could find a better kind of triangle and contradict his theory. It could be suggested that the demiurgic point of view allows us to construct a prototype of the universe inside of our minds. A partial example of such prototype focused on astronomical question is alluded to at 42d, when Timus claimed that the complexity of celestial motion claims that due to the complexity of celestial motion, a visible representation, mimema, would be necessary to reach a complete knowledge. In case of the universe, the ultimate prototype would not only involve the description of the planetary motion, but also a complete visual representation of the universe in all its details. The demiurgic point of view allows to try, as far as we humanly capable, to produce a living representation. And as Socrates wishes with regard to the ideal city described at the beginning of the dialogue, an image in motion of the universe. So next point, just check the time, but I think the last part of the paper, so it should be okay. So a demiurge for what? So if the demiurge is a device that allows us to conceive the universe, to visualize the universe, then there are 3 difficulties, 3 objections, much more, but 3 that I come first. And I will treat only of one of them. So the first one, what should we make of the fact that the demiurge is causally responsible for the world soul? I'm not talking about that. 2, what is the function of the young gods who seems to take over the demiurgic work? I'm not talking about that. I mean, I can talk in the discussion if there are some questions. And 3, how should we interpret the demiurge geometrization of the traces of the element? I'm talking about that. In Timer's speech, two aspects seems to be distinguished when it comes to describing participation. First, the traces of the four elements appear in the receptacle, and then these traces are geometrized by the Demiurge with number and figures. As traces, these three elements could either not yet be or no longer be images of the element. If it is true that, strictly speaking, these are traces of the element, not of the model of the element, it nevertheless seems that setting the pre-cosmic chaos just after the description of the four elements, which are called images of the form of the four elements, especially at 52c, strongly suggests, in my opinion, that the traces should be identified with the images of the form. These traces are said to be without proportion and measure. And when Timer's returns to talk about them at 69b, he claimed that they should not even be called by the name of the four elements. The distinction between a proto-participation, the reflection, if you want, of the form in the receptacle, and a higher degree of participation obtained by the action of a demiurgic geometrization has led some scholars to associate the divine craftsman with a necessary cause of participation. Another possibility, which appears to me more likely, but within, of course, my interpretation, consists in conceiving the demiurge as, once again, an epistemological tool in order to tool that allow us to construct inside of our mind the process of participation. To do so, it is necessary to look at, to visualize what the sensible would be without participation. If we suppress participation, what would be the sensible? It could not be nothing at all, since in that case, we would have to admit that nothingness participates in form, which is impossible. A solution to this problem would be to counterfactually isolate a pre-cosmic state of participation. This counterfactual construction depicts the traces of the elements appearing in the receptacle. We should remember that traces can be either the result of a previous participation or the anticipation of a participation yet to come. This second alternative is, I think, the correct one. In order to understand what participation is, Timer's isolates a pre-participation state of affair and describes a progressive process of participation, the geometrization of the traces, which is in reality constantly occurring in the universe. At the end, participation for sensible objects equal their direct relation to different forms, and the presence of this form in them must be understood in terms of mathematical structure. What more could be said about that? The demiurgic point of view allows to experiment what is this participation, again, in motion. Conclusion, very short conclusion, yes. If we come back to the question of the function, of the demiurge, the last objection must be, in terms of conclusion, raised. In his discourse, the demiurge himself seems to suggest that beyond the bonds found between the constituents of the universe as a geometrical proportion for the four elements, we must suppose, as every bond can in theory be dissolved by the one that has established it, the existence of a stronger and more sovereign bond, the demiurge boulesis. Apparently, two levels of bonds exist in the universe, and one, the demiurge boulesis, cannot be reduced to the bond of mathematical proportion found within the universe structure. If it is the case, then it seems that the demiurge should not be considered as a mere perspective, but must indeed play an ontological role. Nevertheless, as it is stated in the Phaedo, the divine bond is, quoting 99b 5 to 6, the good and binding that truly binds and holds together. In other words, the demiurge not only embodies a perspective about the nature of the universe, but also a specific point of view, which offers the contemplation of the universe as the best possible ordered whole. The demiurge represents, I think, a specific perspective unveiling to us the good in the universe, and in that sense, he can be said to be the most excellent of intelligible and eternal things, 37a1. to be sure that divine encroachment is not the form of the good, but the macro and microscope that allow us to understand the beauty and the goodness of the universe. The Demiurge seems then, if the Demiurge then is this epistemological device, transforming timeless speech into thought experiments that combine argumentation and visualization, it seems to satisfy the three criteria that I very quickly highlight at the beginning of this talk. Timeless speech offers the counterfactual fiction, one, which because of the necessary process of image production involved for some aspect of the universe could not be converted into a mere deductive or non-deductive argumentation, two, which leads us, in fact, some of us, the friends of the God, to new pieces of knowledge on the nature of the universe. Three, the Demiurge is Plato's device for making it possible for us to contemplate the whole complexity of the moving image that is our cosmos. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have more or less 10 minutes for discussion. So if there are any questions, por supuesto se pueden hacer preguntas también en español. Si alguien tiene preguntas, tenemos aproximadamente 10 minutos. Or in any other language, I'm sure we'll manage. Sí, Ivana Costa. El micro está apagado.
Gracias, Alexandra. And thank you, Luca, for your extremely interesting conference. There are many questions I would like to make, but I will try to review the more I can. I find it very stimulating your naming the Plato's proposal in Timaeus as a mental experiment. In some way, I think that the logos eikos or mythos eikos, I mean, with this word eikos, calls our imagination clearly, because it is the same food. But I'm not sure that the Demiurge, strictly speaking, is a mental experiment. I would put to your consideration two different situations in the beginning of the dialogue, at least in the beginning of Timaeus' parliament speak. You have, first of all, the first appearance of the Demiurge is not inside the logos eikos. This previous to it, I mean, considering axiomatically, let's say, as David Runia many years ago proposed, axiomatically that if we have being and becoming, we have to have a cause of becoming. Mm-hmm. And this cause is metaphorically described as an artisan, as a demiurge. But this first part of the dialogue, this first part of Timaeus' speech, is not inside the logos eikos. It is previous. I mean, if we can accord on this basis, we can deduce some things, and then we begin with the logos eikos. I mean, with this experiment. And the second point in the beginning, just after the methodological excursus of 29 BD, the logos eikos principle, you have this so important quote. I mean, why the Demiurge, why the God made this world? Because he is good and he cannot do anything but the good. And this is something we have to accept from very, very clever, very Sophoy persons from the past. I mean, it's something axiomatic. I mean, it's something from which Timaeus begin. I mean, it's not a mental experiment. I mean, we have as a common assumption, teleology, or as moderns will say, finalism, in the discourse about nature. So this is why I find it a bit difficult to identify the Demiurge with a mental experiment.
So thank you very much for the question. They are very important and very fundamental questions. So I'll try to briefly say a few things about them. Of course, first of all, also because it was, like a limited talk, I filmed quite a lot of things without giving any justification. But what I would like to say on the first point you made, which is completely true. So the introduction of the Demiurge is made before we enter into the reasoning or the experiment or the myth. It's the same thing any way you interpret what comes after. So there are, of course, quite a long discussion about the legitimacy of this introduction. That is, if the argument, which is a deduction, is valid or not. It seems, and now of course everyone has its opinion, and it's a bit difficult to defend one and not recognize the other one. But which seem that if you leave the interpretation of the scholar, we think that the introduction of the Demiurge is completely legitimate. Then you belong to the other category of interpreters or scholars who thinks that it's a bit problematic to introduce a productive cause within this argument, which has the three axiom or premises, as we can call them, introduced. And then, of course, everyone needs to find an explanation of why do we have productive cause, especially if you think at the second part of the Timaeus, where the forms are described as a kind of cause. It's even called to be the father of the universe. So it's a bit strange, of course, to have, and for some people, it makes this argument invalid. So of course I cannot find the solution of why Plato did that, but I think it is indeed voluntary that he introduced the productive cause. And in my opinion, which is of course a minimalist answer, it's a way to tell the reader that we should maybe look very closely at what is the Demiurge. And as he said, it's difficult to talk about him. It's not everyone can understand what he does. So I would interpret this part just as a kind of prudence, maybe not to be to take it too literally. I'm sorry, of course, I respect very much the literal approach of the time. So what I want to say, I should be shorter, is that it does not, I think, disqualify the approach of being a thought experiment, because anyway, everyone needs to deal with this introduction, even actually if you defend a literal approach of the Demiurge. And the second point is very important. I try to suggest a little bit about that in the conclusion. So of course my approach is a bit maybe too economical. That is, if you don't need let's say an ontological principle, you should understand it as a different kind of device or tool. And this is why, and I mean, even if you don't like the name of thought experiment, you can see the Demiurge as a kind of epistemic tool or other thing. You don't need to buy I mean, I think it's interesting, but just to say that. And now the thing which is very interesting is, if you don't think that there is an ontological function for the Demiurge, which of course we should look at all the action is made and to see if there is another plausible cause. And I think what you need is the model, the receptacle, and the world soul. That's also important. I'm not sure we need a Demiurge to have causal power. Of course, your question, and that's the important thing, was about the goodness or the beauty of the world, because the Demiurge is good, and the universe in consequence will be beautiful. To be short, because I talk too much. I think what you cannot do away with is the good, and I think the form of the good. So in that point, I would, even though the text does not talk about that, be more sympathetic to the scholars who claim that there is a function of the good and the form of the good associated with or in the model, but that speculative. But I think that the Demiurge, as a point of view, allows to see why there is this theological configuration of the universe, but it does not, at any case, needs to be the cause of this order. But also, I mean, it could well be the case that a lot of people think you need that cause. But it's at the end, I think, of course, people are very. But I talk too much. Maybe I should. There are other questions.
Yes, there's still another question. There's no problem. Stefanos Estefanides.
Yes, I'd just like to press you on this idea of kind of the Demiurge's causal power and efficacy, because on your account, I didn't really see how we can kind of reconcile the Demiurge merely being a thought experiment with Plato's clear remarks on him being a kind of active causal principle of the universe. And I guess you would say the kind of form of the good kind of has this causal efficacy, but the remark in the Phaedo is very, very vague. And it's in the context, of course, of Socrates discussing nous intelligence and how nous orders things for the best. So probably the form of the good is an ultimate kind of unifying principle, but it still needs a kind of causal agent to do the ordering itself. And kind of to bolster that thought further, I mean, what would you do with the Philebus and the fourfold kind in the Philebus, where each ingredient seems to be a kind of ontological principle, where nous is quite clearly singled out as the active agent which does the mixing. I think that there are various things to kind of say about this in defense of the point of kind of nous being a causal principle, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. So very important points, and at that time I'll try to be brief. So on the first point, I think you need an intellective cause in the universe in order to keep the organization, the configuration, and all the order in the universe. And of course, on that issue, I can agree with the defendant of a non-literal approach, the third category I mentioned, which identifies or associates the intellect with the world soul. So I think that the world soul, to put it directly, which is responsible of that causality in the universe, and I think that can also answer the second question. I know this is a highly polemical passage in the Philebus, but it seems to me that it can be read as implying that the productive or the demiurgic cause is actually the soul. I know that,
Could I just very briefly respond to that? Because in the case of the world soul, isn't it able to kind of have this ordering responsibility, as it seems to kind of do in the laws, actually, which might support your point, because it has intelligence, because it has nous, because nous is in the world soul. That kind of seems to suggest that intelligence kind of has that causal priority.
Right. No, of course, but so I come back to let's say to my suggestion is is it something you would need specifically the Demiurge to do, to causally do in the universe? And I'm sure you would answer yes, but and you know, at the end, I think that the universe, but of course, it's the question of maybe, as I say, the way of uniting Plato cosmology, and that of course implies different things. But I think the universe works well with the model, the receptacle, and the world soul. But I'm sure, of course, you disagree because you. But of course, that's a very old debate, and it should be maybe it will be continued on other occasion, I hope.
We are already over the time, but we have two more questions, or maybe just one. One of them just lowered their hand. Yes, two questions. I would suggest just a very short information. The session will continue in more or less 2.5 hours, 3:30 Peruvian time. And I think because we have a pause now, we can, those participants who wish to remain a little bit longer for the discussion may very well do so. So Edward Halper, please.
Yeah. Thank you for the paper. I'm very sympathetic to your view, and I just want to suggest something. I just want to suggest something to you. One of the things that you get, one of the epistemic benefits that you get from the Demiurge is not just to explain the beauty and the organization, the order of the world, but also to explain its unintelligibility. The form is imposed on matter, it can't be completely imposed, necessity remains. And I think that that's equally important for the metaphor. Just a suggestion again.
Thank you very much. That I think that's very useful, and indeed. So I also be very quick, but it's also a little bit of a methodological problem I have, because when you say, of course, thought experiment, you are sometimes, some people are waiting for, you know, a kind of experiment with one counterfactual situation that you run and you have a result. And some other people are more open, and they even associate discourses, literature to thought experiment. And I think it's important to find maybe a middle way. That's why I talk about this way of making the experiment about fashioning the universe, and to say something about the intelligibility of the universe, that I think, as I try to, but maybe not clearly enough, and that's something I should have maybe say more. It seems to me very important not to let outside of the experiment what you were talking about, which is the chaotic part, which is present. So that's why I don't think the only counterfactual situation is just fabricating, if you want, the universe, but it's let's say, to be short, fabricating the universe from chaos.
Thank you. There's a question from Martin Seid. I'm sorry, but we can't actually understand what you're saying. There seems to be a problem with your microphone.
Hear this?
Yes, perfect now.
Okay. You should feel free to dismiss this question out of hand if it's not relevant to enough to your theme. But to what extent might your thesis about the thought experiment be qualified by the role of the Timaeus as an intermediate point in allowing Socrates to see his city in motion? It's to enable Critias's account. And does that have any bearing on what you've been trying to say?
Yes, so yeah, actually very much so. So I would not dismiss that at all. I think actually, of course, what I offered here is a very partial way of the notion of thought experiment, but I really think everything's, I quoted one time, comes up to Socrates' wishes at the beginning of the timers, and when he asked to see a city like the animal fighting, in motion, and that's not a point I'd like to make today because it's already a bit late. But I think we could bring it also the idea of political thought experiment, and even before the cosmological discourses, there is a kind of experiment you do, of course, maybe in history with the case of the archaic Athens and the Atlantid, but also associated to the Republic city in the sky. So I think that's also something which can help to bring this thought experimental view. But of course, on the other side, it should be very delimited, because if not, one might criticize that everything can be a thought experiment, and that would maybe make it lose a little bit of its interest. But I very much agree with your idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then, well, we are now well over the time. Thank you very much, all of you participants and guests. As I already said, we have a little bit more than 2 hours break. We will be continuing at 3:30 Peruvian time, 10:30 European time, with presentations on, well, more presentations on Koinonia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandra. Bye.
Bye.